President Trump also sent out a tweet accusing House Speaker Nancy Pelosi of not negotiating in good faith. However, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell warns the nation's recovery could falter without more federal stimulus. In Texas, food banks across the state are urging lawmakers to reconsider cutting off critical funding as we head into this holiday season. If things do continue as they are, the Coastal Bend Food Bank will receive around $35,000 less in state grant money this year. 3 News reporter Mariah Gallego shows us how that could affect families in the Coastal Bend.
It started back in May when Governor Greg Abbott issued an order directing all state agencies to cut their budgets by 5%. Governor Abbott stating in this letter, quote, "There is a significant economic uncertainty not only in this state but across the country and around the world. It will take months until we know the true extent of the economic ramifications of COVID-19 and how combating this virus will impact state finances. To prepare for this economic shock, we must take action today so that the state can continue providing the essential services that Texans expect." One of those agencies was the Texas Department of Agriculture. They decided that instead of the 5% requested, they would make a 10% cut. TDA Commissioner Sid Miller stating, quote, "State government needs to tighten its belt along with everyone else. While TDA is already a lean, efficient agency that pays its own way, I've directed my staff to cut 10% without affecting our farmers and ranchers or rural communities." Part of that 10% cut was aimed directly at a nearly $2 million surplus agricultural product grant. The agency administers to food banks across Texas, including the Coastal Bend Food Bank.
A grant that the food banks receive money in order to access and purchase produce.
The grant is a win-win as farmers are paid for the produce not sold in stores and families in the Coastal Bend are able to receive nutritious food. For the Coastal Bend Food Bank, that means a loss of $30,000. According to Feeding America, our food banks can buy between 5 and 10 meals with a single dollar through programs similar to the surplus agricultural grant.
The $30,000 that we will lose, it will equal to about 240,000 pounds of produce. We are really going to be struggling.
And although Hansen says she understands Governor Abbott made the decision in hopes of recovering from the pandemic economic fallout.
Everybody's in the same boat, unfortunately, but feeding and eating is something that people cannot do without.
B. Hansen says 30% of the people being served by the nonprofit are turning to them for first-time help. Hansen added this is a problem that may only be compounded as the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays approach. Food banks across the state are hoping the Texas Department of Agriculture will reverse the move and reinstate the funds. If you'd like to help, you can contact your local lawmakers or make a donation to the Coastal Bend Food Bank.